Hey guys, JV here, back again with another repair of an iPhone 6 that has been water damaged. Now, this has been pretty much a request from a lot of people. So what I'm going to do is I finally got one that's come through, and I'll show you what I do in the first stage of trying to get a water damaged iPhone 6, 6S, 6 Plus, or even 6S Plus back online. So the first thing you'll need is a toothbrush, a pry open tool, Phillips head screwdriver, pentalobe screwdriver, little bucket so you can submerge your board and clean it in the alcohol, and of course some rubbing alcohol. In the description below I've got a link with where you can get all these tools and even the rubbing alcohol. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you do like and subscribe and you do order those parts and stuff, you'll be able to easily find that video again. So let's get started. Once again, this will cover most models of the iPhone 6 series, the 6S, 6S Plus and 6 Plus. Now I've also in the description below, I have got a screw chart. Now what the screw chart does is you can just print that out, put it on your desk, and then when you remove the screws, you can put them in the exact location on that chart, so when you have to put them back, you don't get confused and you know which screws to use. So first thing is you need to get the pentalobe screwdriver and unscrew the bottom of the two pentalobe screws. Once that's done, we get our pry open tool and we need to lift the screen off. So with an iPhone 6 it's fairly easy because there's no sticky adhesive underneath, so it'll come off easier. With the 6S it's a bit trickier, but it just means that you've got adhesive or like a little membrane underneath, so you just need to slowly move it down, and you'll see I'm only just putting it in by millimeters. So you slowly move it down and around like so. And what I'm doing is I'm just loosening everything up, and then we can just open it like a book. It's not as easy with the 6S series. You just have to be a bit more patient, but it'll come off. And we just lift it up with a pry open tool and open it like a book almost. So at this point, the most important thing when it comes to anything that has water damage is we need to remove any type of charge going through the phone. Your phone might be off, but remember that if the battery is plugged in, there's still a little tiny bit of charge going through there, which can cause havoc if you've got a water damaged phone. When things start to dry, things start to corrode a bit more, and then that's when things can go pear-shaped. So the first thing is we need to hold that screen, and we got to take off this little plate and disconnect the battery. Using a Phillips head screwdriver, we take off the two screws here. And then we remove the plate. As you can see, there's already a bit of rust here. That's normal. You'll be seeing this type of stuff. The key to actually getting the best possible outcome with any type of water damage repair is trying to get it fixed as soon as possible. Whether you're going to try and fix it yourself or you're going to get a repair store, you need to get it within a day or at least a few days. If you leave it a week or so, the percentages go down of it being able to work again. Now you just remove that plate, and we disconnect the battery. You can use your fingernail, anything that's non-conductive. So this is actually a non-conductive tool that I'm using. And there we go. So now we lift that off and there is no charge finally going through there. So your option is you can take it to a store, or you can even try and continue and do the repair that I'm showing you today. Okay, so now the next step is, what we want to do is disconnect the screen. So we get our Phillips head screwdriver and we disconnect the screws, which is a fairly easy task. Obviously you can hold with one hand on that cable there. And we take out all those screws, and that plate covering the cable should easily pop off. Now, what you'll be greeted with is some cable connectors. We just need to lift them off. Just comes off like little bits of Lego. So you pop, pop 2, pop 3, pop 4, they come off. Put the screen aside. And now our purpose of this whole thing is we need to remove, if you look, it looks like it's in a bit of an L shape. This is the board. Okay, so we need to remove that board. So the first thing is we disconnect that. We disconnect that charging port cable, and we disconnect the camera connector there. And now we need to remove the SIM tray. You can use a SIM ejector tool. I like to just slide it out this way. You can use your nail, it's alright. Just a little side note, you'll see that there's a little red indicator here and here. They're generally white. What Apple has put in the actual iPhones is a water damage indicator, so they turn red when there's liquid damage. This obviously has been damaged here with liquid and damaged in that section with liquid, so it has had a fair bit of liquid damage, but fingers crossed we might be able to turn it on. Okay, now the next step is we need to remove the screws. Once again, refer to that screw chart that I've linked in the description below. That screw chart, if you print it out, you'll be able to find where to put the screws, and when you have to put everything back in place, it'll make life a lot easier. Okay, so there's no real correct way on where to start. I just start here usually at the bottom and work my way up. So I go and remove this screw. And then I'll slowly move up. And of course we need to disconnect this. This just pops up. It's the actual antenna for your cellular. A lot of people forget to put it on after they fix their phone, and they wonder why they can't get any type of reception at all. It's usually because of that, or they haven't clipped it in properly. And we just slowly work our way up. And with this part here, I just like to loosen this screw, and I'll show you why, and then put that aside on the screw chart, because then we'll be able to lift off the board without actually removing the camera. There's a plate here held down by 2 Phillips head screws. Okay, that plate is held down there by 2 Phillips screws. We remove them, then we remove the plate, easily comes off. Once again, we're greeted with some connectors, so we just lift them up. Those connectors actually lead to the volume and mute switch, but we just need to lift them up temporarily. And it seems like as this has been repaired before, there's supposed to be 2 screws there, but there isn't, and there's supposed to be a screw there, but they're just all general Phillips head screws. So we remove them, and you remove that, you remove that, remove that. This will pop up. Okay. Now once we put it back together, actually I'm going to find screws and put them in myself. This part here, you can even like remove that screw there and leave that connected, and then it'll save you from, you know, having to remove, to put that connector back in. Now with this part here, you can use a Phillips head. It depends how tight it is on. This part here is a screw, and that needs to come off. Now, I like to use a flathead screwdriver. can even use something as basic as the ISSMR. I've done that before, but so I can show it in the video, I will actually get a flathead screwdriver and do that. Okay, now we remove that like that. It's a real easy screw to take off. It can be a bit tricky to put on. I usually put it on with actually a Phillips head screwdriver, then tighten it with a flathead screwdriver. I find that easier, but it's each of their own. Now, the next part of this is removing the board. So just gently lift up the board and it should just slide out. Okay, that's come out easy. We put that aside, the back housing. Now this is, how should I say, the star of the show, where we're going to be focusing on sorting this out today. I can't actually see any type of corrosion as such. If you look at the little chips here and stuff like that, generally you can see parts that are corroded, which is a great thing if it isn't corroded, because there's a higher chance that your actual board will start back up again. Now there are also under these plates here chips, but to actually remove those plates, it's a very tricky thing. So we want to just do the least, how should I say, the least technical way first before we start taking plates off and doing things like that. So the first thing is, what I like to do is we get our isopropyl and we just pour it in. Now we just pour enough into our little container so we can submerge the board. Now, I like to leave it there for a few minutes. And I like to soak the actual toothbrush as well. So now what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to remove, once it's submerged, I like to remove this bottom sticker here. The problem being is that when you remove this, it's very tricky to put back on. But we need to get under there, so be so careful that you don't, see there, it's so easy to knock off those little resistors and small electronic parts. And you just slowly take that sticker off. Now by removing that, we're exposing a lot more of the board. And this is a part where a lot of the time that we can find that if we do clean it thoroughly, it'll actually fix the situation. But let's soak it in there. Now with a toothbrush, you want to make sure it's a very soft bristle toothbrush. If you can't find a soft bristle toothbrush, you can even use a cotton earbud or something like that, where you're essentially not wanting to be abrasive with the actual alcohol. You're just wanting to rub off any type of deposits of dirt, minerals, or anything that's started to build up over time due to the water damage. Even a bit of corrosion, and you just want to, I'm not even putting any pressure on that at all. I mean, if I was to put a lot of pressure, you would see some of those little things pop up and fall off, and it's game over once that's done. So we slowly just brush that. The great thing about this is I actually have a good feeling that this board will start back up. I can't really visually see any major corrosion, which is something that's good because we've beaten that. But you know, even if the phone does start up, eventually it will corrode, so it needs to go through this cleaning process. So you might be able to use your phone for a while, but eventually things will start to rust and corrode, and then it'll switch off. Around the connector here, this is where the battery connector is, we find a lot of trouble. So I like to give that a thorough clean. And around here, there's nothing that I can visually see. What I mean by corrosion or anything that you can visually see is that you'll generally see like a consistent pattern here where the board looks normal, and then all of a sudden you'll see like little white patches, even rusty patches, and that just doesn't look normal. So even though it would have been good to show an example in this, it's very obvious when you do see something like that. And we just soak it one final time in there. Now the benefit of using high percentage alcohol is that it dries really quick, but you need to make sure it dries. You know, we're not talking leave it there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We're talking leave it there for a good hour at least. And then shake it. Now, if you shake it and you're getting little spatters, that means alcohol's coming out from the side there, and it still needs to be dried. But being a high percentage alcohol, it dries really quick. It'll actually dry in front of our eyes, most of it anyway. So I'll just cut this now. Once it is dry, we'll continue with putting it back together, and let's see if it turns on. Okay, so now this has dried. Everything seems fine. Before I put that sticker back on, I want to test this phone to see if it actually turns on. So let's see if it turns on. And just to do a quick test, you don't need to plug everything back in just yet. You just need to get the main components connected. So I'm gonna slide this in like that. And then we need to remove some of these cables here to make sure it... The great thing is it'll just slide back in place. It looks tricky, but it's actually a pretty easy process to do everything in reverse. Make sure this is connected. I think this is for Wi-Fi. Now we need to just connect the main connectors, which are obviously the flex cables here. We can put cellular in because we want to test if cellular does work. Not essential. Most people are happy just to get it powered up and recovering their data. So hard in front of the camera here because I can't really get close to it and see what I'm doing, so I'm kind of guessing how I'm pushing this in. It just clips on though, the actual cellular part. So it looks tricky from here, but it isn't. It's just because I'm doing this on camera which doesn't make it easier for myself. Okay, now we want to connect the charger, but we're not going to charge. We don't want to put it in charge just yet. We want to avoid that. I want to see if it can turn on by the battery. Now, a lot of the time the battery does go with the actual phone in water damage, so don't be too surprised if you have to replace a battery. It's a very common thing. Batteries are cheap as chips, so you'll be fine. Now, we connect our screen. And we want to see if the battery, obviously there's no charge in that, so I am going to have to charge the battery, and once it's charged we'll give it a shot. Okay, so it's finally charged up, and the good news is it turns on. So unfortunately, I don't have the actual pin code, so I'm going to have to ask the customer what that is. The next step is you need to test the selfie camera, the rear camera, the speaker here, the loudspeaker, and obviously the headphone jack. Now the reason that you want to test these is sometimes they do fail. Now if they do fail, you obviously have to replace those parts. Replacing those parts actually are fairly cheap, so that's a very good thing. Most importantly, as soon as you do also turn it on, make sure you actually back up your data, because nothing is guaranteed. Anything can happen in the future. Something could short out. It has been water damaged previously, so you want to make sure that you do save your data. Now with this actual phone, because it was, I don't know if it was dropped probably on the bottom end, there was a bit of dirt at the bottom of the charging port, so make sure that you do clean that out. Now you want the actual charging cable, and I'm just going to show you an example here. You want that actual charging cable to go all the way in. If you look there, that's going all the way in. Now, if it's sticking out a bit like that, that'll affect it, and it might not even charge and turn on, and you might think, oh, the phone's totally dead, but that's what happened with this phone. So I just clean the dirt out, just using tweezers, or you could use a toothpick, anything, and then just pull out that dirt. Now, as I said, this works most of the time if you jump on it within a day. If you do want to make sure that, you know, if you aren't going to repair it, you disconnect the battery and then take it to a repair shop. They'll really appreciate that, because it'll save them a lot of work and it'll stop you from doing more damage to your phone. Now, with this, make sure that in the description below you print off the screw chart, so you put the screws in the right location. You do everything in the reverse order that I showed you. And once again, thank you for your time.